Welcome to Echoes of the Esoteric. S here, alongside co-host Jenica Haywood. And tonight we're gonna do something just a little bit different. We're gonna riff. We're gonna get into some concepts and ideas here. I know there are probably many of you that have questions about this second level teaching, right? The work that we've been talking about, this consciousness work that is resonating. I hear many bits of feedback, responses about it being resonant and at the same time questions, right? Like we can poke some holes. We can ask why. We can dive into deeper explanations and just kind of riff and volley back and forth with some burning questions around this specific work and why again why do this work, what is this work and why, what is it and why Jen?
Yeah, why spend so much of your energy and time focusing on something that most do not care about or even, I don't know, to not be able to have a conversation with others. I have big whys. I have big whys. And honestly, the first thing that comes into my mind is literally this has been the answer to not only a lifetime of seeking, but the answer to questions I didn't even know how to ask. Um,
Like what?
there's
Take us
many
there. You said it and now I'm just curious.
the why to life, the why, the purpose behind it, the questions of what is God, who is God, what am I doing here, what really is this grander purpose. I have never been able to wrap my head around this standard idea of grow up and get a job and get married and go to school and find a career or have babies and then retire to die. I have never been able to, nothing like this whole picture, and this is why I haven't been able to form it into a question, because this whole picture of life to me has been off.
I'm going, where's the question? No, but keep going, I like where you're going, keep going.
No, yeah, it's really been this deep, again, it's the thing that has always spurred me along to seek for something more, to seek for an answer to something that would bring purpose. And I mean like deep purpose, not just helping others, because of course there's a lot of purpose in that, but like this inner, I don't even want to call it an uncomfortability, but just something. There's a place in me that has been waiting for something to land, that has always been the engine behind my searching for deeper meaning. Ultimately is what it is. I grew up Mormon. I grew up, active in a Christian religion, and that was my parents, that was my grandparents. There's always been just kind of these set, uh, not very specific answers or reasonings behind what life is about, and all of the questions or all of the yearnings for something that really sat in my soul and actually filled a void or filled a space, they were always left in the, you know well, that's something we can't know, that's left to God, we'll find that out when we die, just this open-ended like, no one knows, so forget about it, kind of responses. And depending on my age, it was circled around specific kinds of questions or specific, things that I thought that maybe adults could answer for me. But always just receiving these very open-ended or flippant or, just don't worry about it. no one can really ever know kind of thing. Um, it's just always left me seeking for that deeper underlying, I've just always had this, there's gotta be more. There's gotta be more. And I guess that's why I've never been able to form an exact question, because I definitely had some serious bouts with like depression and with really dipping into those like what's the point of life. But for the most part, I enjoy life. I enjoy being a human. I always have. It's been something that like, yeah, okay, great. But really like what is the meaning? What is what can I really do here? And if we are creators, if we are made in the image of God, if we are the most intelligent species, like, why is it that there's nothing that I can find that satiates my soul, that makes me feel like I've really drunk up life to its full, like in the most, fulfilling, exuberant way? And that doesn't mean, needing millions of dollars to go explore the world and essentially chase around. This has really just been the reason behind all of my searching. And I know that there's, in fact, the majority of people in my life, there's a very select few even understand what I mean when I talk about this inner engine that's seeking something, that desires more. And that's just again more of that sustenance, that fulfilling, like really something that quenches your thirst kind of a thing. That's what this has been for me. Like the it has quenched a thirst that I couldn't even put words around, and I'm now struggling to put words around still. That the majority, if not all people around me, seemed to not even experience or wonder about. I've always been that person that's been deep in thought, that have asked the bigger questions, that, you know, eh, in scripture study have been like, well, how does that mean this when this doesn't mean that? And how does this other thing wrap around? And do you see how that's not making sense? And my teachers are like, would you just stop? Would you just like take what we're giving you and just stop? Like, there's just always been an inner desire, an inner, I don't know what to call it because it's not a void, but it's just been my reason for seeking for some deeper meaning that has been beyond anyone and everyone that I've ever come across until a year ago. Maybe you can help me break that down because I'm sure that you know exactly what I'm talking about. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here either, being someone who has been seeking for that deeper thirst quencher. I don't, truth.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say you said thirst and I was like, water? Water. Yeah. Yep. You just said a lot of things that pinged me in a lot of different ways. I do detect the magnetic center.
There we go. That's like, that is what it's called.
That thing, that thing that pulls you, that draws you. It's like that magnetic monopole that is the engine you're referring to, essentially.
Mhm.
It's not an engine for everyone. It's an engine of different sizes for different people, right?
Mhm.
According to life, according to experience, education, all of the various diverse and sundry impressions and where they came from and where that impression came, it's just built differently in different people. But that magnetic center is what draws you to it.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that
Just
question of why, like the why life, why, what more, where is the answer, the reasons, right? It had me thinking in particular about a a piece of that. a piece of the why of, for me, element of the whole that didn't make sense. And you mentioned religion, right? And being in scripture study and different things like that. And I can remember, not specifically in regard to religion, but just in regard to life and observing people of different kinds, people with different experiences, some of them good, some of them bad, some of those with bad experiences being rich people or poor people, some of those with good experiences being rich people or poor people. We've got money involved, we've got life's experience involved. Some people had this and others didn't. There was such a mixture of experiences that prayer specifically for me did not make sense. Miracles specifically for me did not make sense. And those two things, when you put them together, and you would see someone who isn't a believer receiving abundantly a miracle, someone who is a believer praying ceaselessly for a miracle that never comes. And these types of contrasts with the details of the life involved being mixed up in so many different directions. This person had people praying for them, this person didn't. And in some cases, this happened in a way that it allowed them to receive, and over here it didn't, and vice versa. And all of the details would crisscross in so many different ways that you could never make heads or tails of why.
But
That
and that's
same fucking
yeah.
question, why?
Well, and that's where you're always
Why?
met with, it's how it was meant to be. We'll never know. It's just how life is. Again, these answers that hold no depth, that they have nothing to offer except for just turn a blind eye and forget about it. Like, don't concern
Yeah.
yourself because you're troubling yourself for no reason. And I do want to clarify, this was not a search or seeking, again, this magnetic center has nothing to do with religion of like, where is God? I've spent all this time studying scriptures, where is God? That's intimately intertwined in general, but you're right, just life circumstance. I was born here in the United States, others were not. That totally makes my entire life and its opportunities and situations and experience totally different. And you're right. And then here's all of these different experiences that ultimately all boil down to that's just the way it is. It's just life. You win some, you lose some. It's something that I just could never. I'm like, there, come on. Like, come on. This is what you tell, again, a young kid when you can't explain to them the true, more in-depth meaning behind what it is they're experiencing because
You don't know yourself.
or you don't know yourself. But again, like this is you don't know yourself, but the point being like it just alluded to some higher understanding or some there I've just always had that knowing that there would have to be something that reconciled all of this that made sense,
Right.
some underlying rhythm or pattern, something that would give me more than just some, unknown, just kind of flippant answer. Like God works in mysterious ways. I don't know. Like we live and then we die. Like,
Okay, so enter the esoteric system, enter the work, enter a higher psychological vantage point and new understanding through practice of said system and work, knowledge and being,
mhm.
changing the entire background of the conversation that we just had. How do you see it all now?
Oh man, it has filled so many of those empty like gaps of just waiting and wondering for something to come together. And it's changed it drastically. And I love what you just said. It changed the whole background, which changed everything. The background of which, within which everything takes place. We, all of the events that I now see or experience or have questions about, not only do I know that they can be answered, that there is an actual answer that will cohesively make these puzzle pieces go together, that then present a beautiful picture that can be made sense of. And whether or not I can understand that now or not doesn't cause me any sort of issue. Um, Changing the background has changed everything because I can't, there's an understanding that makes sense of two opposing things and the why behind that. And it may not be as detailed as, well, this is the why for this person in this exact circumstance, but the workings behind how something came to fruition, I now understand. I understand laws that occur. Again, you said background, and it's like the very fabric that creates our experience, our existence, if you will. Everything that is what we see and experience and feel and touch and are, the fabric itself is becoming more and more clear and visible. And being able to apply that to everything that I come into contact with has been the really the only way that I can like explain it is it's like a thirst is being quenched. I'm finding the things that I have been searching for. There are understandings that have satiated these questions that have spurred more questions, sure, but it's I want like an analogy to be able to really portray this. I'm like now searching for one because it's nothing like anything I've come into contact with. There is no flippant, well, we don't know. Like that's just the way it is. There is a very tangible, very objective point direction to this is how this came about. This is, the why behind it, or here is the grander structure that, I may not be able to look at a tragic accident and go, oh, well, this is why this person and that person experienced this in this way. None of those details really actually satiate the question. It's not in those details, it's in the grander, how did this come together? What made this possible? And why is this experience occurring? And those that understand the understandings coming through this esoteric wisdom and through this objective path through self-knowledge, through or to self-knowledge, to greater awareness and understanding. It's like the blueprints behind what it is that we see. It's the structure behind it. It's the background. It's the bones of it. It's it's so fulfilling. I like every day that I push forward on this path, that seeking, that need, that desire for more becomes less and less because it's here and I have it and it's being gifted to me and I'm receiving it. These deep truths of the structure of our reality. Like it is bizarre and wild and so freeing.
Those are word. That's great. You're speaking so beautifully to the patterns and the laws,
Oh,
the scale.
scale is my favorite thing. If you want to understand anything, understand scale, and you can figure out there's a lot of answers that lie in just observing scale. I love it. Yeah, it's so much different than trying to learn the exact reasoning behind why one person suffers in one way and another succeeds in another, and how to avoid that suffering and how to get yourself to success. That's not, it's so that those are just trivial compared to what this kind of knowledge is. And I say that as someone who's been through some seriously deep suffering. Big questions behind why it is that I grew up, as an infant in my throughout my whole childhood, sustaining just horrendous sexual abuse, horrendous ritual, stuff that people still don't even know exists. And that's what I just landed into. That was my cards I was dealt. The amount of whys growing up as a 12-year-old in therapy because of a secret life that no one knows about that I'm now hiding from friends, while simultaneously in a religion that is teaching whatever it's teaching, and me just trying to understand what direction I'm walking in life. It's not why or why not I was raped. That is not the kind of wisdom that this offers. And that kind of wisdom will never satiate this kind of seeking, this kind of desire to understand the matrix, where I'm just the structure, the form, the bones of what it is that we experience. Those questions are answered in a way that you would never actually expect, in a way that any amount of prayer or asking or looking for hard facts, or it just would have never.
You smell that? Do you
What?
smell that? It's time. It's the concept of the time.
What does it smell like? I'm curious.
Smells like fresh linen and patience. It smells like.
Ooh, that's a good combination. Yeah, everybody that I have met along this path of seeking, it seems like the deepest desire of, the deepest desire to answer is really that of why suffering. Why do we suffer so deeply so? And through this work, through this kind of knowledge, it's not why do we suffer? It's it answers the question of life itself, not suffering or non-suffering,
There
poor
is no
or rich.
non-suffering. Yeah,
Yes.
there's no non-suffering. We
Oh.
redirect the suffering and make it intentional.
Therefore, the question why suffering takes on an entirely different form. Why suffer? Well, there's an actual purpose behind this one as opposed to mulling in the experiences that life offers, be it painful or not. We all have both.
Always will.
There is an answer behind suffering, like you said, but it's not what I had ever anticipated going from again, going from my upbringing of having some deep questions, being, subject to or experiencing the great evils of the world. It really is frustrating how words just start.
I know, I was gonna compliment your air quotes on evil. That's
I
duly
can't.
noted. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you, yeah.
Yeah, and even the changeover from, again, like the question of why do we suffer comes from this orientation towards a belief that suffering, that there's not that you cannot suffer, that that's also possible, that there's this side of escaping it. And then I learned the purpose therein and what can actually come from intentional suffering.
And this, we're not talking about self-harm, like just to be clear, for anybody who's listening,
No,
yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
absolutely
We're not
not.
talking about hurting yourself. We're talking about specifically intentionally suffering in work of aligning your inner world, which means facing every bit of the inner world that is not in alignment, that is not real, that is
Well,
not
and truly, that
true.
shows up as very uncomfortable life experiences. So even before getting into learning and aligning the inner world, it's a willingness to take all of these extremely uncomfortable experiences in life and essentially taking the bull by the horns and accepting it and allowing it, not bracing down, not fighting it, not trying to divert it, not hiding from it, running from it, all of these other things that we tend to do, but recognizing that it's within the suffering itself that transformation occurs, and that's the only way through anything. And then we get into the specific aligning and suffering with intention that is just deeply embedded in this work. But I just mean in general, like we all have real difficulties in life. And what you do with that is everything. Recognizing that that is the lead to be turned into gold, recognizing that is the material to actually work with. That's what we get here.
Hmm. The cornerstone discarded.
You're gonna the corners. Say that again.
The cornerstone discarded.
What do you mean by that? The
That's where you
cornerstone.
start building
Mm,
what it is that you're
this,
trying to get away from, whatever aspect of yourself you're like, no, I can't show that to whatever it is.
I see.
Again with
Never
scale, but
heard that
yeah,
sentiment.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I feel like for the first time I've really found something that can like actually change my life. And when I say that, I mean my entire orientation to life and what it is and who I am and what I'm doing here. Like, is there a bigger why than that? If you've got a bigger why,
I
like,
don't. I don't.
well,
I
and
really don't.
anyone listening, like, yeah, drop it in the comments. Let me know. I would love to chat about this stuff because this has really been my entire life, like my entire since being conscious enough to like make my own decisions, you know what I mean? Like old enough to
Right.
to really start wondering about things. Um, yeah, it's been my driving force. I love that you made that connection, that like the magnetic center, like
Yeah.
duh, now that
Yeah.
now that you brought it up, but like
So,
damn, yeah, that's why I can't explain the seeking to non-seekers, to people who have found what makes them that makes them feel, fulfilled or satiated or, just fine tossing away these bigger questions, like totally fine, not an issue, but it has felt like a lonely road just because of that unyielding magnetization towards something more.
you made an interesting correlation between the ability to have this conversation and non-seekers, which opens the door, opens the gateway to a conversation about this work with seekers. Seriously. And
Yep.
it just, I don't know. Immediately when you said that, I'm like, yeah, seeing the whole full balance of non-seeker, seeker, and how many people, I know it's certainly been quite a few for me. How many people or how many times, it doesn't have to be specific, and I'm not even talking tabs, but literally the concept of second level teachings being a miss for people who are on the journey. It's like too many rungs in the ladder are missing, literally and figuratively, of course,
Mhm.
mostly figuratively, but also literally.
Also, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's always that for most people will find the thing that gives them enough to set aside or satiate that hunger, that seeking, that magnetizing towards something more. Most people will find something that will dull out or mute what really does at times. It is a little bit like, it's uncomfortable, it's agitating in a way of just, wanting to know and not knowing. um but because of that gap, it really tests your ultimately your faith in, and I use the word faith entirely different here. I don't know, getting into redefining words, but ultimately it tests how, like, really how much you believe that there is answers, that there is a greater understanding beyond the masses, beyond anything we've really ever come into contact with. The answer behind, these incredible stories of enlightened people, ones that have attained something greater than, and have just been embodiments of ultimate peace and ability. And I feel like the second level teachings, like, if you still have that depth in you that is still seeking out more, well, you're here if you're still seeking out more. But there's always that choice of deciding to stop and kind of give the answers that were always given to me. we'll know after we die. It'll life's a mystery, that I'm just not meant to know, whatever it is. Um, but if this stuff like not only resonates with you, but is really starting to poke at this idea that this might contain what it is you've been seeking for, jump on in. Like, it's entirely different than you ever thought, speaking from experience.
I could not have fathomed in my wildest dreams. I'm sure I did.
Yeah, it's not just another modality, and it's not something that is, well, it's really only for those people who will go to the ends of the earth seeking. And like again, that's probably one of the only parts of me that I've forever known.
We can save you a lot of time.
Yeah.
We can save you a fuck ton of time. A lot, a lot of time.
Yeah, and you will find out for yourself. You will absolutely, like, this is not anything that needs to be convinced. This is not anything that, is, I don't know. You didn't convince me of anything. This has all been my own. Again, I not taking any of it on faith or hope, but boots on the ground, my own experience showing me exactly what the truth is and what the non-truth is. And honestly, the biggest issue has been my own ability to receive and accept that and allow my psychological mind to be shifted and changed, and that kind of disruption in my life. Um, allowing that to happen is honestly one of the biggest thresholds. But oh my God, on the other side, it's never been so put together. It's never been so stable. I've never been so sure, so stable, so, oh, just enthralled with life. I don't even know if that's the right word. I don't care. Oh man. I love that, you've been posting recently about the parable, with the water and the well, and you can drink water from the well and you still have to go back and get more water. But if you drink this, truth, essentially, you'll never be thirsty again. And I have never felt something like that to my core quite so much, of like not being thirsty, not being thirsty for more, or not for more, for like, you know, it's being quenched. Like I love that parable so much because I can actually feel it in myself, in my life, in my direction, like just it's beyond peace. It's like there's a filling up, a filling up of my cup. I don't know.
Questions being answered. Questions being answered. That truth
Yeah.
answers a lot of questions.
Of like the mind, body, and soul, not just my mental mind. That's why a lot of them are hard to even put words around, because they're just those wonderings.
I'm so excited for Cypher. And
Oh man.
you've been touching all over it, caressing it and rubbing it, like just with everything you've been saying. Oh,
It's so far beyond religion. Ah, that is the one thing
yeah,
I
for
keep
sure.
trying to
And
get
that's
across.
there,
Yeah.
it's this part of the beauty of putting this out and having this conversation, because it's going to reach who it's going to reach. It's going to reach who it's meant to reach. It's going to have the impression it's meant to have.
I love it.
no matter which way it goes, no matter how far it goes. And anybody who's listening to this that's like, what cipher? We start in 2 days. First week is initiation. Registration closes on March 26th. So if you're listening to this and it's after March 26th, well, lucky you, because you can still get access to the Cipher Library, which means the first study in the Lost Scriptures of Nag Hammadi and this current study as well. You can always catch up. You can take it at your own pace, but everybody who comes into Cipher, I love the way that this has been constructed, because I personally have looked for the ability to access courses like this, where it's like, wait a minute, you're doing a series, like I want to come be part of that. I want to have access to everything. And that's the way Cipher works. Once you join the community, once you come in and become part of the study group, you have access to all of the previous Cipher studies and whatever current live study is underway, and all future live studies. Like
No.
that. I just, to even say that out loud, I'm like, damn, that was a fucking good idea. So, Flo, thank you. This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of answering questions, parables, if you've ever
Right.
wondered what the fuck the parables are talking about, this will answer questions. uh,
It's a whole new language to be learned, and
yeah.
we're walking through it together in a way that breaks it down and makes it simple and easy to understand. And for anybody who is like curious about or unfamiliar with the esoteric system, jump into the library and you have access to 4 different, I was going to say hour-long classes, but I know some of them, I think there's at least one of them that was like 90 minutes.
Oh yeah.
So we're talking about a lot of content that can be absorbed to introduce you to that system and lay groundwork and foundation for what the esoteric system is. We've been having these conversations for so freaking long already and have built so much knowledge into just what the system is, what the work is, the perspectives behind it, more than the actual fabric of it. And that's really what we're looking at when we dive into Cipher. We're getting into the fabric of the system. We're learning what it is. And it's extensive and it's nuanced. And the foundation to be laid is important. So take that in, soak it up, and it's going to make things so much easier along the way to understand when it comes to essentially using a new language, because we're redefining words and learning what things mean in a new way, not from the literal ordinary meaning, but from a higher psychological value. This is psychological work. I know you spoke to that, but I just want to I want to echo it. I want to reiterate that because it takes place in the inner world. And it was just like you said, like this point of struggle, it's internal. The point of the work, it's internal.
And your psychological perspective on how you view all of that is where the transformation occurs. That's where we actually start getting understandings dawning, pieces coming together and making sense, puzzle pieces turning into a picture. Your psychological vantage point is everything when it comes to this, and by proxy, life.
I love it.
It's so great. It's so freaking
This
cool.
has been so much fun, and I feel like this is it. This is it. We're done. We're done.
Yes,
The
I love it.
invite has been dropped. So much has come forward, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a lot coming up from deep inside of me. This was a nice little riff, very
Yeah.
unplanned. So
Yeah.
thank you to everybody receiving this. I'm actually sitting here wondering how I would even answer these questions in just like a year's time because everything's changing so fast. It's so great. So thank you. Thank you all for being so present because, yeah, that was a lot of me.
Received. Thank you. And thanks to all of you. We'll see you again next week.